coming and being here tonight. I hope you noticed there are treats, including homemade lemon bars, perhaps, and tea, so definitely help yourself. I'm Julia from the library. Did I already say that? I don't know. But we are here with another program in the Camden Talks Climate series put on by CamdenCAN in partnership with the library. And this is hybrid, so we have a virtual crowd as well, and it will also be recorded and put on our YouTube channel. So if you know someone who's interested, then you can tell them to check out our Camden Public Library YouTube channel and they can watch it. And also, as always, we close at 8 p.m., so if you could move out of the door before then, that would be wonderful. And now I'll turn it over to Molly Mulhern from CamdenCAN.
Thank you, Julie. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank Julie and the library for sponsoring us. As she said, this is part of the Camden Talks Climate series. We've had at least 10 or maybe 12 of these events so far, and you can find most of them in the public library of Camden Talks Climate Talks. There's a few also at the municipal site because we've had a couple of talks over there. And a year ago, we had a talk on where do Camden's neighbors stand on climate action. So tonight's event is a little bit of an outgrowth of that, where at that evening, we had several local municipalities talking about what they were doing for their whole climate action plan. And tonight we're going to focus on solar. And I'll come back to that in just a minute. I just want to let people know that next month, Camden Talks Climate will be December 12th. It will be a program by two of our local people. We're going to have one of our steering committee members, Jolene and David Kibbe, will be giving a talk on wild yards. And it's all about how to get your yard to become a pollinator and all sorts of other things. So that will be December 12th here. CamdenCAN also publishes a newsletter with about 400 subscribers. You can find that. There's a sign-up sheet in the back, or contact one of us at the end and we can put you on the subscription for that. It comes out every 2 weeks. We just try to inform people about what other communities are doing for climate action and what our town might be doing on climate action. My name is Molly Mulhern. I'm the founder of that group. We are open to anybody who'd like to join us. There are several steering committee members in this room, and I want to thank them. We couldn't do it without the volunteers. So thank you all for coming. And tonight we're going to be talking about municipal solar. Those of you who live in Camden might know that the town of Camden has a solar array at Sagamore Farms. It was created, put up by Revision Energy about 8 years ago, and we are up for a renewal of that lease, or we purchase it outright. And so tonight's event is designed to help us understand what would that mean for our community if we decide to buy those solar panels, because right now we're leasing them, and I know the gentlemen who will be speaking tonight have some experience in that. So one of the things we hope from tonight is that there'll be questions of these kind gentlemen about the process that their town went through to do this, or maybe other questions that come up, so that to help prepare Camden for the work that might be ahead for our own solar panels. So with no further ado, we have 3 presenters tonight. We have one that was not listed, I'm excited to say, on our publicity. We're going to start with Ken Oelberger from St. George. And Ken is a retired engineer who worked in the aerospace industry for 37 years. He retired to Maine in 2007, and since then he's worked for Trekkers, the St. George Budget Committee, and the St. George Conservation Commission. The recent Conservation Commission projects include a recreational trails program and a grant for a compliant trail and a Land for Maine Futures grant to add an 83-acre parcel to Tennant's Harbor. So we're going to start with Ken, and then we're going to move on to Dave Kinney from Lincolnville, and I'm going to give you all of their bios now, and then we'll have a quick hello when they come up. And Dave Kinney joins us from Lincolnville. He's a lifelong Maine resident. He's a graduate of UMaine. He has a BS in civil engineering and a master's of public administration. He's a licensed professional engineer, and he worked 4 years in the private sector and 34 years in the public sector. And he's currently at the town of Lincolnville for the last 21 years as their town administrator. And our third presenter will be John Fancy. John is representing Thomaston. He's a Maine native who grew up in the greater Portland area, moved to the Mid-Coast area in '71, and now lives in a totally electric home in Appleton with 18 solar panels on his roof. And John was a consultant to the Waldoboro Utility District for over 40 years and has worked with the town of Thomaston since 1989. And as John will explain, a lot of their panels are at the wastewater treatment plant, and we'll get into that when we introduce him later. So with no further ado, I'm going to invite Ken up to talk with us.
Good evening, everyone. I'll tell you a little bit about, oops.
Something just got knocked.
I think we're all set. I'll be careful
We can
here.
use the arrow key.
Tell you a little bit about the system that we had installed on the town transfer station. I think in the PR for this, they talked about it takes perseverance to get it going. And we actually started some work in 2014, the Conservation Commission, to propose to the town to put solar arrays in the town to, basically we started out from a climate change standpoint, and, it's good for the environment, but we also knew that you had to show that it was financially viable to proceed ahead. From that point on, and maybe some of you might remember, but there was a period of time when the net metering was in question of how net metering was going to go ahead. And we went to the select board. Initially, they said, well, hold off. I don't think we're ready for this yet. So we restarted our effort a couple of years later, 2016, and we got estimates and proposals from several companies. And we subsequently put in the 67.5 kilowatt PV system that generates over 80 megawatts of power per year. And that was sized at 90% of the power that we were using in the prior couple of years. Because we knew we didn't want to give back to CMP power because of the way that net metering works. If you produce more than you use, you lose it. So we entered into a contract with Revision in 2017, and we did it for the installation and what's called a power purchase agreement. We looked at the power purchase agreement. We looked at, do we take out a loan and pay it off? Everyone felt that it was the lowest risk approach to have Revision run the system for the first 6 years, and then we'd have the option to purchase it at the end of year 6. So we had no upfront costs for the first 6 years. They took care of everything. There were a few issues during that first 6 months or so. They had to replace a few items in the system, but subsequent to that, everything's been working perfectly. We went into operation in April of 2018. So during the first 6 years, we purchased the power from Revision at a rate lower than CMP's rate. We saved some money, not a lot, but we saved money for those first 6 years. Over those 6.6 years, I just picked up this data this weekend, we've generated 547 million watt hours of power from the system, which averages 82.9 megawatt hours per year, which is more than was initially advertised that it would generate. The environmental benefits, it saved 848,000 pounds of CO2 emissions, which is great from the environment standpoint. And that's equivalent to planting more than 6,400 trees in terms of capturing carbon capture. And then just this past 6 months ago, we purchased the system for $94,000, which was approximately 50% of the initial installation cost if we were going to buy it initially. So we felt that was a good deal, and we're currently saving over $16,000 a year in electric usage. And based on that, we'd have a 5.8-year payback for return on our investment for that. Lessons learned. Well, I guess we weren't thinking about energy improvements that we may have put into the town office subsequent to deciding what power we should set up the system for. So, LED lights and some other energy efficiencies, we wound up using less power than we originally anticipated. And that was the reason that we had lost some of our credits. People will understand that whatever power you put back into the grid, you have 12 months to use it. So it's a use it or lose it situation. So during those first 6 years, we did lose some. And part of that has to do with the system of, in town, we have 6 meters in town. So you have to do an allocation of that power consumption across your 6 meters. So you're taking your best assessment of how much each meter is going to take. Because the one that was taking the most power, which is the town office and fire station, was the one where there were most efficiency improvements, we lost the most in terms of having to give it back to CMP from that standpoint. Subsequent, we've been able to do a reallocation of those over those 6 meters. And I'm not sure, I try to find out exactly how often we can reallocate. Somebody thought we could do it quarterly, but I wasn't able to find out that since we've done that. So, with suboptimal allocation initially, but overall, I think we've worked out quite well for the town. So that's about it. We'll let who's ever.
We're going to hold questions until the end, so if you have a specific question for Ken, if you could hold on to it, that would be great.
Who's next?
The next person is going to be Dave Kinney, and Dave is from Lincolnville, as we said, a neighbor to the west.
So you have
He's got 2 photos, yeah.
There you go.
All right, you can use the arrow key. The next one, I think, is kind of small, but you can zoom in on it.
All right, let's give you the start with the next. There we go. Let's start with that one. Thank you. I'm going to read you this whole book that I brought with me. So I'm not sure we get it done by 8 o'clock, so maybe I'll just skip to this one page. Lincolnville's experience was very similar to what Ken just described in St. George. We might have had a similar start. Our project, which you can see here, it's right adjacent to Route 52. So if you come to Lincolnville Center, that's our fire station. We had land available that fortunately was oriented in the right, well, we could put the panels up or in the right direction. Our community library, which is not town owned, it's on town property, leased from the town, started off, I believe in 2014 with an installation on their roof for their library, for their power. Very successful project. That they had some efficiency main monies that rolled into the project at the time, and let's just say they were successful and they wanted to expand that. They were community-minded individuals that took on that project and had success. Came at the time back in, that was in 2014 and 2015, Lincolnville was part of the Mid-Coast Economic Development District, which is now the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. And they had a solarized Mid-Coast Maine effort underway where they were trying to help people put in private installations for their homes. And people got excited about that. I was pushing it, sign up, find out, get some information, see if it works for you. And I hate to say this out loud, but I will. I wasn't thinking for the town at the time, thinking about the community, and some of those same people that had experience at the library were exploring the solarized Mid-Coast Maine, and came back and said, don't you think we could do something like this for the town? It was like, well, if you want to, maybe. I don't get to make any decisions in Lincolnville. I may be the town administrator for 21 years. Decisions are made by the select board and town meeting. So we did a little bit of research behind the scenes, figured out that it certainly can work and what we had for land opportunities. The group, it was a citizens group first and driven. So when I look out here and I see citizens I know that if you want it in Camden, you can have it. You can make it happen. It's just a matter of time and effort and perseverance. Those folks came in and met with the select board. Select board said, well, if we can make it go, you know, maybe let's try. And then empowered, took a number of people that were on the citizens group and put them on a town committee. Towns, you know, notoriously form committees and go off and do your work and come back and tell us what happens. We looked at energy audits in our buildings. We've surveyed various town properties to see what might be out there and available, and looked at the historic use of power at our facilities. So it sounds very similar to your efforts, Ken. In June of that year, the folks came back and made a presentation and said, why not? Let's issue a request for proposals for solar firms to install the solar array. We received 3 proposals back from various companies. Everybody had their own take on it or ideas. We too aimed at 90% because we didn't want to give something, you know, a town asset away. We got, that'll be a lesson learned. We got a little bit of burnt on that too. And I'll get to that. But the numbers look good. We paid, the proposals all were slightly less than what we were paying to Central Maine Power for electric, or through the standard offer for power. And that ratcheted up over time. We had a schedule that said, you know, this year, I'm making these numbers up, it was 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Next year was 5.1 cents, and then it was 5.2, and it went up over time. All the proposers proposed a power purchase agreement. The advantage to that for those folks was there were tax credits available. Town doesn't need a tax credit, we don't pay taxes. But a private entity could recoup tax credits, which lowered our cost, and then we guaranteed that we purchase every kilowatt hour that they generated. So they knew that they had the income unless we did some, you know, even if we did some savings, they were gonna get it because we were gonna pay it. No matter how much they generated, we were gonna buy each and every kilowatt hour. So you wanna size it right. And select board had to go to town meeting to get authorization to use the land. This was town-owned property. We own about 15 acres at the fire station. About half of that is in conservation because of wetland impacts. We had to get back to the fire station. Town meeting was so popular that it was held in the town office. The town office meeting room is smaller than this meeting room. There were so many people there, they moved it over to the school. And it passed unanimously. The group had, the citizens committee or the town committee had done their homework, had numbers, facts, figures, you know, every question that was possible, they were prepared for in terms of answering. It passed. Select board moved ahead with hiring a contractor to install it. We also use Revision Energy. They started that fall, and by the end of the year, the project was complete. This photo was taken just before the project went online. You can see the exposed soil was the trench with the underground power coming from the panels to the back of the fire station. The next photo just shows you that it actually, you know, if I make it bigger, if I know how to do that.
For some reason, it came out very small.
Oh, there we go. This was taken the next spring. You can still see a little bit of the soil, but there is, believe me, there's plenty of grass there now that we have to maintain. We mow that field once a year, and then under the panels, we mow every couple of years. I think John's gonna show you a nice slide of their solution for that. Since January 3rd of 2016, we've been generating electricity there. Our power purchase agreement at the time allowed us to purchase anytime after year 6, because that's when the tax credits went away. There was actually a change and we were actually able to purchase it after year 5. Our energy team got reinvigorated by the select board to say, you know, is it to our advantage to purchase this early or to purchase it at all, or to keep paying, you know, revision to manage it and the costs associated with that we were buying electricity from them. The energy team came back and said it is to the town's advantage to purchase this as early as possible. We started setting aside money a couple of years in advance. We actually, our purchase cost was a little bit under $60,000. We set aside $20,000 for 3 years, or the third year was the last year of the same year we were going to purchase. We anticipate that this will save us about $300,000 over the life of the array. Nobody knows exactly how long that array is going to last. You will lose, or they tell you, you'll lose capacity. It will generate about 0.5% less every year, is what we were told. We're not experiencing that, but we only have 8 years in too. So for 7 of our 8 years, we have hit our mark, or what we projected we would be at, or what the arrays would generate. The 1 year we didn't, we were at 99.4%, and because it wasn't really a sunny year, you know. That's the variable you can't control. But all the other years we've exceeded. Again, as they had experience in St. George, we had sized this for 90% of our anticipated usage. We too continued to make improvements at our various facilities, so we're not using as much electricity. The other thing that we got caught in was we had used the electricity used by the streetlights. Don't do that. Streetlights aren't metered, and we rented them, and we still continue. We don't have many streetlights in Lincolnville anymore. We have 6, but it threw off the calculation. So we are generating in Lincolnville slightly more than 100% of what we use. We have one lady that works in the front office that is cold in the middle of the summer on the hottest day, and she has an electric heater under her desk. And I would tell her, prior to us having a solar array that generated more electricity than we needed, I would tell her that you really should turn that off. But I don't do that quite as much now. That, you know, the joy of working in an office with 4 people and everybody wants, you know, their space at their own temperature, but that was her solution, and it's worked well. A couple other things I wanted to touch on. Again, we thought by the time we're done, we think we'll be about $300,000 to the good. Our array is smaller than the St. George. We are at 43.4 kilowatt generating capacity. And we have had a couple of glitches. Not so much with the panels or the generation themselves, but the reporting. We can access this remotely to find out how much it's generating, and you know that relies on the internet and relies on electrical equipment and modems and whatever else. And believe it or not, those things do have breakdowns, and if somebody's not clicking, you know, to check it on a daily basis, it looks like, well, this past year, if you look at our reporting that anybody can access online off the town website, it looks like we're having a lousy year, but it was because the reporting didn't occur, but the meter was still doing its thing, so we got credit for what we generate, and we'll be able to correct that at some point, get that up to speed. We are also planning, we have 5 inverters that are mounted on the back of the fire station. We're doing planning for the future, putting a little bit of money aside, thinking, you know, it is electric, it has electronics in it, those things do break. We don't want something to go kaflooey in the middle of the year and not be able to replace it because the budget cycle's not the right time. The other thing that we do is the renewable energy credits that we own. We have Revision sell for us, so we get a little bit of money back. We get they sell it annually between $1,500 and $1,800 a year roughly back to us, which is a bonus. So that's kind of our experience thus far. I think I've touched the high points a little bit.
Thank you, David, and I'm going to invite John Fancy up to give us a little bit broader story of Thomaston's experience. And after John is done, we'll have all three come up and we'll do some Q&As.
Thank you. I'm John Fancy, and I'm a little older, so my story starts a little sooner with what happened in Thomaston. Back in 2010, the federal government felt that we needed a little more support for our economy, and so they offered the stimulus grants, if you remember. And if I can make this work right, we applied for a stimulus grant and we received $77,273, and we had to put up $6,103 to put together a solar array for the roof of the wastewater treatment plant's control building.
I'm just gonna change something because the screen share on Zoom was showing multiple slides at once, so let me just redo that.
Technology.
And now I'm going to share from here. Want to see. Okay. Thank you.
I'm not like the vacuum cleaner salesman, I don't have to start over again from the beginning. So we'll go to this slide here. We put 78 panels on the roof of the control building. These are only 220 watt panels, which today is pretty minuscule. You can buy 500 watt panels today just as easily. And we put 78 of them on there. They were supposed to generate 22,900 kilowatts a year. And how are they doing today? In the last 5 years, they have run from, well, we had one good year there in 22 when the sun shined a lot. But in the other years, it looks like we're well above 90%. We're up into the 94, 95% still after 14 years. So I have to say that we feel they were successful. We generated enough, over 300,000 kilowatt hours in the 14 years. We have saved over $40,000. But the real benefit is we haven't spent a penny on any of those 78 panels. There's been zero maintenance, zero cost. They all still work just the way they did. None of the converters have failed yet, although we're putting money aside also just in case. But we followed this through the time, and as the previous speakers have mentioned, it wasn't a good time for solar in Maine in the period between 2010 and about 2018 or 19. There was no real advantage. We looked at a number of ideas of what we could do in Thomaston, and none of them made economic sense in the long run. So finally in 2019, the legislature changed the rules and made it much more reasonable, and it made it economically feasible for bigger solar operations. So the wastewater treatment system, and I was the superintendent in those days, the wastewater system uses about 70 to 75% of all the power generated or used in Thomaston. So I went to the select board and I looked at it and I said, I've looked at this and I've studied it, and I would like to put in enough panels to power what we need at the pollution control facility. And the chairman looked at me and said, no! put in enough for all the municipal system. And I did. So we put in this array here. This was put on in, we call it the 21 system because it actually went online in 21. It is 1,290 panels, generates over 600,000 kilowatt hours a year, which, as mentioned previously, was intended to power about 90% of our usage. I understand now that things don't go back to CMP if you run over anymore. If you generate more power than you're using, it actually, the PUC takes it and they use it to put into the package that goes for people who can't afford to pay their own electric bills. I looked at this and decided that that certainly is a cause that the municipalities can support. So I'm pushing to get more panels put in Thomaston so we will generate more than 100% of the power that we need to use. In the last years that this has been in business, this was first year only represents 10 months, but we got 87% of the power that we expected to get, which was the design that we had planned. And in this 23, we got 90.2%, and I estimated this year at 646,000 kilowatt hours. I used November and December's figures from last year to generate this year's figure. But it looks like we're going to be up over 100% this year. And in 3 years, again, we have spent not a penny on maintenance or care of this. I wanted to mention briefly the two different kinds of arrangements you can make with CMP. You can have a billing credit agreement or a kilowatt hour credit agreement. So the billing credit agreement is where you feed all the power that you make into the grid. And the CMP gives you credits for how many ever accounts you can pay for with that account, with that amount. And you set up a cascading allotment list which says pay this bill first, pay this bill next, and so on down until you run out of money this month. And this is what we do with the big system that we have down there. You can also have a kilowatt hour one, which is what we have on the roof of the control building, because we use far more power. We've got 100 horsepower pumps and major blowers running in this building 24/7, so we use more power. We never, unless everything is shut down, we never put anything out to the grid. So instead of giving us a credit for that, if we send something out to the grid one day when we're doing maintenance or something, what CMP does at the end of the month is take off the kilowatt hours off your bill. No money actually is involved. It's just kilowatt hours. And this agreement applies to the system here and to our other system that I'll get to in a moment. So the electric power is generated and goes to the grid, and then CMP gives us credit. Right at the moment, we're getting almost 18 cents a kilowatt hour for what we're sending to them as a credit against what we electricity use. The other one that I wanted to mention, and I guess you mentioned it, didn't you?
Just slightly. You'll do a better job.
I won't. Renewable energy credits, or RECs. And my big push is, if you're gonna get into the solar business, own it. Don't let somebody else own it. The only way you come out of this ahead is with owning it. Don't go for getting 15% off, go for getting 100% off. That's where you wanna be. So if you have renewable energy credits, if you own the system, every time you put 1,000 kilowatt hours into the grid, you get one RECs. RECs are proof that the power was generated with renewable energy. RECs have value. They are traded on a platform just like stock would be. Our RECs are in a computer in California, but nevertheless, they're traded on there. And the RECs can be sold. Most of your power companies across the country are required to have a certain amount of electricity generated by renewable sources in their, what they sell to you. CMP does, I can't remember it, but seems to me they have to have 30% renewable energy by 2030 or something like that. And every year it steps up. So to prove it, they have to buy Rexes. So Rexes sell, currently, the ones generated in Maine are selling between $30 and $35 a Rex. So Thomaston sells around $18,000 to $20,000 a year worth of Rexes. This really helps the bottom line. Oh, here's my maintenance crews who take care of the vegetation going under the line. And they're really good. They're not unionized, they don't need lunch breaks, they're really good. So, we had some money left over, we borrowed $1,200,000. By the way, the voters, no problem, they said, great, and approved it easily. So we borrowed $1.2 million to put in the big system. We had some money left over, so we put another 50 panels on the garage at the wastewater treatment plant. These also feed into the same system. These are kilowatt hour agreements. They're not going to the grid, they're used right there on the site. And we borrowed the $1.2 million at 1.676% interest. Now, you know, if you're borrowed money recently that you're paying 6 or 8%. So if you can borrow money at 1.67%, it hardly pays to pay it back, frankly. So this was a really good deal. This saved us a lot of money. And this system right here with 50 panels cost us $64,500. It's only been in there for, well, all of 23, and now I'm estimating 24. It was supposed to generate 22,739 kilowatt hours per year. It seems to be generating far more than that, and either the design people miscalculated, or it's really a good system. I'm not sure which, but it works good. We don't have to worry. And again, zero maintenance cost in the time that we've had this. The benefits to Thomaston, back in 2018 and 2019, it cost us about $150,000 a year to buy electricity from CMP. We have 29 accounts. And all that was paid to CMP. Now, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm not a big CMP supporter. So this didn't make me happy. So this right now in the 24 budget, we are paying back $1.2 million that we borrowed at a very reasonable rate. Costs us $90,000 a year. We are putting money into maintenance of the streetlight system and saving money for other things in through there. And if we don't use it, it goes in reserve, plus some more reserve money every year. The reserve money covers the difference between what we generate and what CMP charges us for our electricity. So that's covered with that. And also last year we took money out of the reserve account and replaced the lighting in the Public Works garage with LED all through. So we're working to do this. And we sold $18,500 worth of Rexes. I strongly feel you need to own your own system. And so our costs were $94,000. We're saving about $50,000 a year right now. We've got another 12 or 11 years to pay on that bond, and then the town's gonna come out of it with another $90,000 a year. I don't think we're doing too badly. Oh, and as part of the whole deal, we threw an electric car charger out back of the business block. And we thought that when we put this in 5 years ago, that it would sort of encourage and help people to be enthusiastic about an electric vehicle, because we don't charge. You can come down and charge your vehicle up for nothing, because basically we're not paying for it anyway. It's part of the solar array. So, and if you can see how we started out with only 500 kilowatt hours used the first year, my estimate this year is we'll be over 27,000 kilowatt hours. So obviously, it's having some effect on people who drive electric vehicles, and maybe we can actually encourage more people to do so. Thinking about where we want to be down the road, electric usage is going to go up. Thomaston has bought 2 electric police cars. We will probably replace more of our vehicles with electric vehicles. Heat pumps, we put heat pumps in some of our buildings. We've got more going in. We need to do something to upgrade or keep improving so we will keep up with the electric usage that we're gonna have. Because I'm sure it's gonna increase. And we are looking at installing more solar panels or replacing the existing ones. If we took the 78 that are on the garage off and put in 78 of the new style ones, we'd double our output on that roof. And that may be worth doing. After all, we've only got $6,000 we ever spent for that, so it's a good deal. We're looking at a couple of ideas here. One of them is, you saw the lagoons in that first panel where the big picture was, and the treatment lagoons in the background. Now they have an option of floating solar panels on water. It's big in Europe, it's big in the Near East, Far East, but it hasn't sold well in America yet, although there are some in Florida. But I'd like to do it here. We've got about 2 acres of area that we could use. That's enough for another 1,500 panels. The advantage to putting it on water is, one, you're not taking up valuable agricultural land or forest land or farmland that would be used for something better. And two, they're generally wide open with no trees shading them, so you've got much better solar arrays, so you pull a pickup. So you're going to get better electric usage out of them. And the last thing we're looking at is, I feel very strongly about solar. So one of the things we're looking at is the idea of putting in a solar cooperative in a community sense, so that everybody in town could join in with it. And it turned out that South Thomaston is working on the same idea. So we have started collaborating with South Thomaston with the idea that both towns would join together and we could put in a co-op that would serve both towns. And one of the points we want to make on it is that we want to save about 1/3 of the available capacity in that system for low to moderate income people. Again, I feel strongly that it is a municipal responsibility to help everybody, not just those who can afford to buy into a co-op. So in that respect, we're looking at being able to offer membership within the co-op on a buy-in business where you would pay monthly rather than have to come up with the whole thing at one time. So we think that'll benefit everybody in town. And with that, I will stop. Thank you all.
Thank you, John. Have a seat up here, and if we could invite Dave and Ken to come up. And I just wanted to open the floor to either the Zoom people or those in the room if there's any questions. Fine. Oh, Paul.
Are there, with any of your systems, were there issues, I guess especially with Thomaston, with the interconnection? The Lincoln, the two other arrays are not huge, so did you just connect directly to the existing local
Grid.
distribution lines, or did they have to bring
Well,
any other?
One of the advantages of putting the big array at the treatment plant was that we have 3-phase power coming into the treatment plant.
Okay.
So connecting with them there was good. You do have to have real good access to the grid in order to put in a bigger size solar system, you're right.
But so it wasn't an issue because you already had that?
We were lucky.
You had some
And,
sizable lines already going in there?
well, Thomaston was fortunate in that Dragon Cement was one of the largest electric users in the state of Maine. So we have a lot of heavy grid in that town. So we had an advantage there.
Was there,
The
what
key
about-
case in our case was that the transformer on the pole, the transfer station was adequate to,
really?
put the power back into the grid.
Well, you guys are puny compared to his
Right.
bigger array,
But
but no, that's, yeah, okay.
Yes, Susan.
Yeah, the way you all presented it is kind of the end of, almost like the end of the story. So of course, the end of a project is always, it sounds smooth. So I'm wondering, for a town just starting out, what would you think in terms of challenges? Kind of what are the risks or the gotchas that maybe you experienced or maybe you didn't? I mean, I know things take time. Time is always a consideration, but
I think the major thing that I would emphasize is ownership.
yeah.
You really need to own it. If you can find town land that is available for you, Thomaston was lucky in that we own a 500-acre site where the treatment plant is. at the town forest. So we were able to build on the edge of the town forest in an area that was not, I don't want to say visible. Nobody can see it unless they're flying over it. It's, so keeping it, you don't want to put one in the middle of the street. You want something that's works with the terrain you have. But certainly owning the system, you will get far more return on it. You will be better off in the long run. These systems are reliable.
So
You can-
you owned it in the beginning, you didn't do a lease first, you owned it.
We owned it,
Very start, you got
all the
it
systems
owned.
we've put in, we own. Yes. And you get a better return. The town will be much better off in the long run if you own it.
Was that because you were able, because you were on staff and able to push that, or was there a citizens committee that was pushing it, or was it staff?
I was the
led?
big pusher on that, but I didn't have a lot of opposition from the citizens. Once when I told you the story of telling it to select board, and they didn't want me to build a smaller one, they wanted me to build a bigger one. And it went from there to the citizens, and they were very supportive. We got the $1.2 million without a whole lot of problem. Nobody really spoke against it. So I think that speaks up.
I don't disagree with what John said, but there is a political reality that goes with all of this. John was able to get the support. I think we could have sold that idea in Lincolnville. I don't know if it would have been unanimous like it was at town meeting when they voted it. We didn't put any money up front. So there wasn't any cost to the town besides the efforts of people that were volunteering their time to put in. And it allowed itself to prove itself, which a lot of people need the proof, you know. I think if you look at it today, if you looked at the Thomaston experience, the St. George experience, the Lincolnville experience, and you drive around the state, you see solar arrays everywhere. It's working. It can obviously generate electricity. So some of the proof isn't necessary for as many people. But no money up front makes it attractive. We knew what our costs were going to be. We had a schedule that's in that notebook that told us each year what we were gonna pay for a kilowatt hour. So we knew what the costs were going to be, and we knew that we could buy out at any point we wanted to, well, after this, turns out 5 years. And the costs were laid out for us. And once we had a little bit of track record, it became very obvious that, okay, it works. It's working in Thomaston, it's working all around. And then you say, okay, now how do we pay for it? In John's case, he said they went out and borrowed $1 million. In our case, we knew the cost was gonna be just under $60,000. And we knew a couple of years in advance, we put $20,000 in the bank, knowing that when that opportunity came, if it continued to prove itself, it would be easy to pull the trigger because the money was there.
Ken,
And we
how
had
did
a
you pay?
similar experience.
Yeah, how did you pay?
We had the same experience, really. I mean, people looked at it was low risk to get started, right? The revision was holding all the risk to the system. If there's anything goes wrong, it was their responsibility. Just like in Lincolnville, we had a rate schedule that went over the first 6 years. So we knew what we were gonna be paying for power from revision during those 6 years. And at that point in time, we also started putting money into a sinking fund so that the $90,000 that I talked about spending this year, we already had in the bank to pay for it after year 6. And there were options in that contract that said we could have extended it 5-year periods. If we weren't ready to purchase it after that 6-year period, we had options in the contract to go with 5 more year periods with revision for them to continue to run the system. But I think like Lincolnville at this point, if we were gonna propose a new system, we may more seriously look at putting the money up front, knowing we'd be saving it right from the beginning.
And Camden does have a PPA with revision for the panels that are up at Sagamore Farm. And we have gone past our 6-year, I think we're at year 7, I can't quite remember. So we're at that, Camden is at that place, and we can get that that form to any of you. And Jeremy knows of it, and that's why we're having these conversations, because we'd like to see the town go ahead and do what all of these three towns have done and invest in it so that we own the solar panels. But there's also a capacity issue. We have, where ours covers about 7% of the municipalities' energy needs, electricity needs right now. And yours is covering.
We're 100.
And what is yours how
Yeah,
much percent?
We're probably at 100 now that we've reduced the electricity in certain
That's right, yeah,
town
so
buildings.
we have a kind of a large energy draw out by the mountains there. Other questions?
Could John tell us a bit more about how this works where low-income people can buy the less expensive solar power, or even how does that whole thing work? Could you talk some about that, because that's also like.
Well, if you set up a community solar co-op, which is not a part of a municipality, by the way, it's a separate operation, they would own the array, they would set up the arrangements with CMP, and you would have the same sort of cascading list, and everybody, if you bought into it and you bought your share, you might buy 500 kilowatt hours a month. And every month that would be taken, that would be $0 in your bill. So you would save money with that. But you're gonna have to buy into a co-op because they need the money to buy the array with or to pay off the cost of the array. So if you had to have I don't know how much it'll be because we haven't got that far yet, but it's gonna be several $1,000s. So if somebody had to come up with several $1,000s, a lot of people, that's not gonna be a problem. Some people, that will be a major problem. So what we're saying is that in order to make this available to everybody, so that anybody in the communities can benefit from it, we're offering a program where, supposing your electric bill is currently, you got a couple of kids who stand in the shower all day, but you got $200 a month you're paying an electric bill. If you could get 500 kilowatt hours of that removed, your bill might drop to $100. So we're saying that you would pay $100 for your electricity that you're getting above the amount, but you're saving $100. So could you put part of that, maybe you'd put $50 of that a month into buying your share of the co-op. So you'd be a member of the co-op, but you'd be paying it off over time. So it would be available to everybody, hopefully, through whatever savings they could get by being a member of the co-op.
And you also indicated that the town might buy some so that the people that.
Yeah, we only generate 90% of the power that we use, and I see it going, the use of power going up. So it's possible that the town could decide, and South Thomaston has the same problem, could decide to become members of the co-op. They wouldn't be owners of it, they would just buy a membership share or 2 or 3 membership shares, and they would get enough energy out of that to make up the gap between what we generate and what we use.
But I think you also indicated that for some people that were not able to pay their electricity, there might be a way that there could be a fund set up through some of that extra solar capacity to help.
I was gonna say, if you put in a lot more, say, floating capacity out on your lagoon or whatever, at least at the beginning, if you're foreseeing growing demand, at the beginning, you presumably have excess capacity. Is that something that one, at least theoretically, could use through a fund to just provide
Well-
heavily subsidized or even no-cost power to qualifying residents?
I guess the co-op, if they chose to do that, and the co-op is controlled, I guess you'd say, the governance from the co-op would be the membership. So if the membership decided they wanted to do that, they could. We're still in the early stages. We've been thinking about this for a couple of years, but only this fall did we really start moving together to put this in position. And what we've done now is we're going to work with the University of Maine this winter to work out the technical end of it, as to even whether we should have, could we put it onto the lagoon? the co-op would have to rent space from the town if they did that, or should the co-op buy some land and put their own system in their, on their own land? And the other thing we're looking at is how do we set up a co-op? And if you're not familiar with them, it's not unlike the Port Clyde Fishermen's Co-op, where everybody's a member, you are part of it, and you benefit from being a member of it. So that's what we're looking at doing. I expect that this is gonna, in the next year, we're gonna work out most of the details on this and figure out where we're going. I think it's a good deal, frankly.
Certainly renters could use it, and you don't have to own a home to have, yeah. Other questions?
Here's a question on Zoom. Somebody is wondering about the use of batteries and sharing power between systems, in this case between municipalities by the use of batteries.
I think it's a good idea. The problem with batteries at the moment is the price. You remember when computers first came out and they were up $10, and now you can go to Walmart and buy one for a couple $100? Well, batteries are back at the beginning. When batteries come down in price so that they're much more economical, I think that's we're gonna see more use. I will put them in my house when I feel the price has come down enough. I don't feel it has yet. I haven't figured out what I'm gonna do when we lose power, but I'm gonna work on that. But I think batteries are something for the future and definitely worthwhile looking into.
We don't have batteries at our system. Fortunately, what we generate at the fire station that isn't used at the fire station, we get credit for the cascading system for the town office and the bandstand and the harbor and sidewalk lights and whatever else is on the list. We did have a private company construct about a 20-acre solar array in Lincolnville that looked at putting batteries in. I think their motivation was they could sell it at a higher rate if they could store it. They chose not to do that when they actually did the installation, but it's still available and out there. Given the system we have where, you know, the meter doesn't run backwards, but everybody calls it that. You know, we put it out on the grid and we bring back what we need. We don't really have a need at the moment for battery backups.
Jolene?
So this is a really great presentation about using different forms of energy, but I'm wondering if there's any conversation in these communities about using energy differently. And what I mean by that is we're used to having energy 24/7. So when the last power outage happened at my house, I thought, gosh, you know, like the power's out. So what do I do now? I do things that don't take power. I go to bed early when it's dark, I get up early with the light, and that means that I'm actually not needing a battery because I'm using the energy when it's available. And so that's a behavioral change, but what it leads to is the less need for batteries, which require fossil fuel to mine the materials, and it is more degradation, there's more use of energy. So if we just keep building more and more energy on top of the other energy, we're not gonna get very far. But if we build different energy and then we use energy differently, and we change some of our habits, we put in LEDs, we use it when it's available, right? We budget it when it's there, then maybe we could, without too much cost, with a little bit of effort, a little bit of creativity, we could change how we use our energy so that we don't need to have a lot of extra expenses, extra batteries, extra mining, extra whatever. So that's just convenience, right? Convenience is costly.
I think that's a good idea, but I have to tell you that in Thomaston, we bought the street lights at the same time you people did here in Camden. And I thought this would be a wonderful idea if we dimmed them down at 9 o'clock at night and we turned them off at midnight. We would have dark skies, we would have people sleeping peacefully. I thought this is a really good idea, so we started it. They practically ran me out of town. I think, no, everybody said, oh my God, I'm gonna be robbed. You gotta have lights in the night. You can't do this, you can't turn them down. So we're back to running the lights. I think what has to happen here is we have to have the timing so that the population adjusts to what's going on. Your idea is a good one, but it's gonna take time to get it accepted.
Evie?
I just wanted to say, I read a report from Audra, our town manager today, somebody, I guess it was in the Penn Bay Pilot, somebody sent it to me. And they're talking about doing the dimming here. They're changing some existing things, I guess they're going all the LED, but they're talking pretty seriously, it sounds like they're gonna do the dimming. But that's been kind of in the works, mentioned for a while, you know, it didn't just happen suddenly.
Behavior modification is challenging. Now, we're a small community, Lincolnville. We had a grand total of, I think it was 18 streetlights. Similar to the conversations about, you know, that you all are having about power, we had people come and say, do we really need to have all 18? We have 6. We got rid of 12. Not completely without complaint, but
It's good for you.
I wouldn't, you know, it all depends on what your community wants to do, and I think that's where you know, one of the things I'd wanna leave you with is there are more people in this room than it takes, you know, it takes one really to start it off, and then the effort grows. And there's more people in this room than were on the Lincolnville Energy team, and you can make it happen. You just have to persevere. You just have to have that goal in mind and keep pushing, keep bringing one more person in with you, and the next thing you know, you'll go to town meeting or in the ballot booth and you'll be able to vote on $1 million project, and it'll save you money.
Anybody else? Yes, Lynn?
Yeah, it's not really a question, it's a comment, and I live in Lincolnville, and part of, I think, getting rid of the streetlights really had to do with dark skies. And we're really big and strong on dark skies in Lincolnville, and there's a whole committee on that, and we're just trying to eliminate the light pollution. And it's wonderful, we had a great opportunity to see the northern lights in Lincolnville, they were really strong.
The other part of that is we actually, when DOT did the project through Lincolnville Beach, the town purchased sidewalk lighting. And it was also in an area where we had streetlights. So then we had 2 lights, you know, one 12 feet up and one 30 feet up, and people were like, well, that's kind of stupid. And we eliminated a lot of the redundancy. And ultimately, we took those sidewalk lights that were initially put up, and well, they were coming nearer the end of their useful life, and replaced those with LED. So one of the things, you know, where we were burning high pressure sodium lights before, using a fair amount of electricity, we converted to, you know, a newer modern technology that used less electricity. So that's why we went from 90% to 92, 93, and so we're slightly over 100% now. So if the sun keeps shining, we're gonna put extra kilowatts back in the grid, and nobody's gonna complain.
All right, one more and then we'll wind up. Yes, Bill?
Yeah, I have a question about the cows, because,
The cows. Goats?
goats, sorry, goats. I thought I saw a cow in the picture, never mind.
No.
Did you have to make sure that the supports were rugged enough and that the panels were high enough that they wouldn't do things like jump up on the panels? And because I've heard that with, you know, people are talking a lot about agrivoltaics these days, combining photovoltaics with agriculture in a lot of different ways. And in Rockport, they have the blueberry thing that's supposed to be agrivoltaic. But one of the issues I heard with grazing, with sheep it's generally okay, with larger animals and with goats, it can be a problem with the actual supports of the array. Has it been in?
There was no problem in Thomaston with that. The panels had enough of a slope to them and there was enough weeds for them to eat. And I don't think they were really excited about climbing up on it. There are some concrete bases underneath there, and they did jump up on the concrete base, but that's the only thing I
So,
saw.
there's been no damage to the panels?
There was no damage to the system.
And
They
did
didn't,
they basically take care of all of the?
they did a
most of it?
wonderful job on it. In fact, I hired them for 2 months to be there, and at the end of about 7 weeks, we figured they better go home because they'd eaten everything in sight.
Well, I want to, on that fun note, I just want to thank you three again for joining us.